This movie begins with a creepy monologue by an unknown woman. She argues that everyone dies, but certain deaths are so horrible that they are permanently stamped on our memories. All of these acts of violence are engraved in one area because the deceased want their stories told. Spoiler ahead! Watch out! The film then switches to a bookseller who is organizing books on the shelf. Suddenly, he is confronted by a criminal named Bennett, who follows him with a knife. It turns out that he owes Bennett money and has been unable to pay. In an attempt to save himself, the bookseller tells Bennett about an uncommon book valued at millions of dollars and provides him with its location. Bennett still manages to kill him. The thug then exits the store and then informs his partner about the rare book known as the Book of Blood. In the meantime, the killed retailer appears to be smiling, suggesting that he gave Bennett an extremely dangerous assignment. After that, we see Jenna's name scratched into someone's skin. The picture then transforms us into Jenna, a young college student living with her parents in a magnificent mansion near the sea. She seemed to be healing from depression triggered by an earlier interaction with a friend. During dinner, Jenna is easily bothered by common sounds such as chewing, water leaking, and laughter. She frequently uses a noise-canceling headset to block out the background noise. Jenna overhears her parents discussing sending her to a rehabilitation center in the hopes that she will return to normal behavior. After learning about the couple's decision, she decides to leave the house and escape. At midnight, while her parents are sleeping, she goes into their bedroom and grabs some money from the safe. She gathers her belongings and heads straight to the bus terminal. Considering she has nowhere to go, she requests a ticket to Los Angeles. However, when exiting the station, Jenna spots a weird man wearing black gazing at her. She swiftly walks away and boards the bus. Jenna gets frustrated by the numerous sounds of people dining behind where she is sitting. She switches on her headphones, but her sense of fear continues. After a few hours, the exact same man in black stepped onto the bus and took a seat, so she quickly exits the bus at her next stop. While wandering blindly, Jenna then enters a cyber cafe and looks for nearby lodging. She does not have plenty of options, so she chooses low-cost accommodation. In the following scene, Jenna arrives at the huge homestay. She is warmly embraced by the owners, an elderly couple named Ellie and Sam. Jenna then walks to her room, where she is contacted by a young man named Gavin, another guest. They then had a friendly conversation. Late at night, as Jenna prepares to go to bed, she hears unusual sounds resulting from her room walls. When Jenna goes to look at it, she discovers a cockroach coming out of it, which is when Ellie enters the room. Jenna is calmed down by the old woman, who asks her for tea and cake. Ellie later explains that she used to be a certified nurse, and her husband, Sam, is a carpenter. Sam then states that their residence has a roach problem, which they will resolve soon. After the reunion, Jenna tells Sam that she has misophonia, a disease that causes her to be readily activated by sounds. Sometimes she wishes she had never been born. Gavin invites her out for coffee the next day, and she accepts. They share numbers and agree to meet tomorrow. Unfortunately, when Jenna goes to bed, she experiences sleep paralysis. She suddenly sees a ghostly image of her mom drinking wine. Furthermore, Gavin appears and attempts to have intercourse with her. Then the old couple measures her and notices the same person in black strangely looking through the window. Soon later, she vomits cockroaches, revealing that all had been a nightmare. Jenna goes to meet Gavin in a neighboring cafe in the morning. She sits for a few minutes, however, he doesn't arrive. At this point, she notices the creepy man wearing black looking at her. Jenna leaves the situation through the back door as she realizes she is being tracked. She returns to the home and tells Ellie about her mental problems. In response, the elderly woman calms her and offers she stay there for a few more days to refresh all her thoughts. At night, Jenna hears scratching sounds that originate from the wall. She looks closer into the wall and notices a secret cabinet. After opening it, she is frightened when she sees a zombie-like woman inside, her eyes and ears patched. Ellie knocks on the door and Jenna receives a text message from Gavin, prompting her to contact the cops. What she wouldn't anticipate is that Ellie is the one sending messages from his phone. At that point, the zombie woman pulls Jenna's hair over the wall. Jenna decides she should leave, so as soon as Ellie enters the room, she knocks her unconscious with a blow to the head. Jenna checks every door in the house, but they all appear to be locked. In an effort to get outside of the place, she begins examining the walls until she discovers a hidden path. Jenna then approaches the dark area before thinking, only to discover several zombie-like people trapped there. She reaches the bottom floor but gets stopped by Sam. Ellie then injects Jenna with a sedative, dropping her unconscious. When Jenna returns to consciousness, she finds herself tied to a chair. Ellie discloses that her daughter's family made the decision to leave the house a number of years ago, but she refused to allow it. The couple paralyzed them and kept them behind the wall and under the floor, believing that this would provide them with an even better life. Gavin is the most recent victim, and he is stuck somewhere. Ellie states to be assisting these people from the terrible world. The couple provides them with food in order to ensure that they stay alive. Now it is Jenna's turn to be paralyzed and locked inside the wall, so Ellie injects a catatonic needle into her eye. But just as she is about to remove her eyes, somebody knocks on the door. Ellie walks to the door and finds the exact same man in black. He pulls out a photograph of his son with Jenna and asks whether she's here. Then he declares that he has been tracking her around simply because he wants to talk to her. Ellie says that Jenna went away a few hours before, but she welcomes the man in for tea. The man admits that his son Tony and Jenna were in a relationship. He had been trying to locate Jenna, considering she was on the phone with Tony the night he died. Sadly, Sam hits him from behind and kills him. On the other side, Jenna regains her composure and attempts to depart. She somehow manages to make her way to the floor and escape through the window. Jenna, having no place to head, jumps into the black-dressed man's car and hides in the back seat before the couple arrives. Sam puts the lifeless man wearing black into the same car and rushes away. Ellie follows him carefully in her own vehicle. After a little while, they reach a remote area on the summit of a hill. Sam exits the car and lets the car drive down the cliff. The next scene displays a different name, Miles, carved into someone's bloodied skin. Following that, a blurry video of a naked man in a small room occurs. All of a sudden, he begins to feel something strange, and suddenly the lights go out. The man's horrific screams are heard, and shortly after the lights are turned back on, bloody writings have covered the walls. Mary, a psychic researcher, examines the video but rejects it as a fraud. Later, we learn that her only child, Miles, has been suffering from cancer. Mary goes to see him at the hospital and discovers her ex-husband outside. It turns out that this dad left the family some time ago, and Mary declines to let him meet his son. Miles is in his last stages. The boy has just one wish, that is to stay with his mom forever. A few days later, we get to know that Miles passed away, but Mary continues to work at her office despite all of her sorrow. She then discovers a man named Simon waiting for her, and he admits that he had sent her the video footage a few days ago. Furthermore, he is the same individual that appeared in the video and purports to be the dead's messenger. Mary does not believe in him and orders him to leave. However, when Simon claims Miles sent him, she agrees to listen to him. The picture then shifts to many weeks later, where we find the two have formed a connection. They have created a foundation that invites renowned experts from around the world to witness the dead talk. Following this, we are led to a flashback. In one of their earlier trials, Simon stripped naked and entered an empty room. As the guests watch from the outside, Mary closely checks Simon to see whether he is hiding anything. Once the examination concludes, she exits the room and shuts the door. Simon soon reminds them that the experiment could turn grisly since he is preparing to contact the dead. The lights unexpectedly turn out, and his terrified screams can be heard. Similar to the previous video, as soon as the lights come back on, Simon experiences a seizure on the floor, along with blood markings all over the walls. One of the messages seems to be from Miles, stating that he is not sleeping. Mary feels shocked to discover this and assumes the message is from her son. She then expresses an interest in Simon and conducts additional research on him. When Mary takes him to her house, he immediately walks to Miles's room and claims that the youngster is there. The young guy who shows up in her life gives her a sense of optimism and joy, and she ends up having an affair with him. As days and weeks go by, they continue their tests and start a foundation. Mary feels more connected to her son while she is with Simon. One day, she accidentally discovers Simon sleeping with a strange girl. At this time, the drunk Simon unknowingly confesses that he is nothing more than a fraud who imaginations. He is not a messenger of the dead and learned about Miles from her ex-husband. He immediately explains how he carried out the experiment by fixing the room. Simon paid a maintenance worker to turn down the power for a few seconds. He wrote the messages the night before using a chemical. This chemical remains invisible unless contacted by an activated stimulation. And to make the seizures appear more real, he infused himself with a microdose of penicillin an hour before the act. Mary is devastated after hearing all of this and hurries to her son's room. As mom hugs his favorite toy, an invisible entity appears and writes on the neighboring board, "Bring him to us." In the morning hours, Simon approaches Mary, expresses regret for his conduct, and plans to leave. Mary, on the other hand, requests that he carry out the act, stating that there is a large sum of money on the table. Simon is surprised by her words, yet agrees with her. The film then turns to the present, where Mary has a conversation with a group of investors. She cheerfully reveals that Simon will give them a live display of his powers. He then inquires as to what she is doing, since he is unprepared for the performance, but Mary instructs her to simply play ahead. She then walks him to Miles's room, strips him nude, and shuts the door, informing the audience that whatever happens, the door should remain locked. Simon notices the chair moving, and Miles is seated on it. Then several more spirits appear and start fighting him. They cruelly carve his skin and carve hundreds of words into it. He begs and yells to be saved, while the entire town gets into darkness in a moment. When she finally unlocks the door, she discovers a bloodied and half-dead Simon on the floor, his whole body coated with messages from the dead. We then see Bennett's name written in blood, and the frame shifts back to Bennett and the other man, Steve. They are on their way to find the Book of Blood when they nearly hit a girl who ends up to be Jenna. As the two approach their destination, Steve informs Bennett that the city is a haunted location where no one dares to go. Bennett tells Steve to drive without speaking. Unfortunately, after entering the abandoned town, odd things begin to happen. Their car's battery unexpectedly dies, and Steve encounters the spirit of his mother. Not speaking anything, he follows her to a neighboring church. Bennett seeks out his companion and quickly finds him. Bennett assumes he is praying, but it turns out he keeps holding a gun and kills himself. Terrified, he leaves the church and goes through the pitch-black streets until he reaches Mary's house. After looking around, Bennett hears laughter from upstairs and rushes to Miles's room, where he discovers the now elderly Mary. Simon is also there, and amid the horrific circumstances, Bennett aims his weapon at her and demands the Book of Blood. However, she responds that Simon is the book, and his entire body is engraved with stories written by the dead. Bennett finds his name written on the man's body just before he gets attacked by a pack of rats. Bennett runs out of the house and tries to kill the rats with a knife. However, he accidentally stabs himself multiple times. He stumbles across the streets, terribly bleeding, until he arrives at Ellie and Sam's house. Currently, the elderly man taking care of Gavin's body. Ellie approaches him in the back and kills him. The scene then turns to Jenna, who is in the hospital after sustaining the accident. The cops inform her parents that she discovered her body near Tony's father's. Jenna gets away from the hospital a few days later, but she remains extremely unhappy. One night, she begins to remember about her time with her previous boyfriend. We next get a flashback to Jenna's final chat with Tony. They are both mentally ill patients who are striving to recover. In a surprising turn of events, Jenna is found to have triggered Tony's suicide. They formed a suicide pact, and Jenna claimed to be on top of a roof with him. However, she was at home and unable to go through with it. Tony was similarly afraid to do the crime, but when she marked him a coward, he jumped from the building. Jenna is currently feeling horrible about her acts and crying over them. Arriving with her life, she flees home once more and meets the terrible couple of her own choice. She begs them to relieve her misery, and they happily obey. The duo then carries out their experiment on Jenna, sewing her eyes and ears. The movie closes with her being buried in one of the chambers. Jenna smiles as she finally gets rid of the terrible noises. We really hope you enjoyed today's recap of the movie Books of Blood. Please leave a comment below on what you loved about the movie and why. Be sure to like the video, and please don't forget to support our channel by subscribing so you don't miss any amazing content. Until next time, light, camera, action. We look forward to seeing you in our next video.